All right, we are on record, and I'd like to introduce our guest today. Uh, our guest is AJ Dome. He is the education reporter for the Manhattan Mercury. He covers K-State and other education related stories for the area. He's a former producer for WIBW TV here in Topeka, and he was on air and reporter for KVOE Radio in Emporia. He has a collection of pandemic poetry and photography. It comes out in about a month. If you'd like one, I will show the website here in just a little bit, or you can message me. We're still working on where some of these events might be, but we'll get that information out. He's planning to talk to us about the process of making a living as a journalist and a writer, and about the novel he's working on, this pandemic poetry. And I will let him tell you anything else he wants to. Everyone, please welcome AJ.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It really is. I wish we could have had this in person outside. Of course, we switched to Zoom, and the weather decides to cooperate. So it be. But no, thank you, Curtis. No, I'm happy to be joining you all today. Yeah, and I'm excited. I'm really excited. This little guy right here, 6 feet apart. I started writing a poem a day. I think it was last St. Patrick's Day. So March 2020, I decided that I needed something to keep myself grounded and to kind of keep the creative juices going, as it were. And so I kind of started dabbling in some poetry. I don't consider myself a poet, or at least I didn't. I guess this book kind of proves otherwise, but I never really considered myself to be a poet in the traditional sense. My writing has always been a little bit more on the creative side, but when I was in high school, I got interested in journalism and newspaper writing and writing for broadcast, and the rest is kind of history after that. I did some broadcast in college, and continued to develop those skills and that interest, and eventually led to the first job, my first real journalism job in Emporia at KVOE. And a lot of folks kind of here at the meeting today, and as well as other folks in the Kansas literature community know of me through that. And that was an excellent time, and very, very eye-opening, as it were. And then went to Topeka, worked in television, briefly worked in Colorado in television, but moved back to Kansas to be closer to family. Plus, it's cheaper. And kind of went from there. I took a break from journalism for a little bit last year. I was, after my television jobs, I was a little bit burned out and needed a break. And then the pandemic hit, and I started to write these daily poems. And Curtis and I kind of brainstormed and decided it would be a good idea to put them together in a little collection. So, and we'll talk about that too. And I'll read some poetry from the book while I've got it here. I am excited. I've got this. This is the proof copy, and it's not quite perfect, but it's pretty cool. I'm excited about it. So, but yeah, no, last year I was working for the Kansas Department of Labor as a temp employee, helping people try to get some pandemic unemployment assistance. But I started to write on a freelance basis for the Kansas Reflector. It's a nonprofit news organization in the state, started by 2 former Topeka Capital Journal reporters and 2 former Kansas City NPR reporters. And they have done great things with that platform. It's digital based. It's just a website. There's no print version for them to have to continue to circulate. And I was interested in writing for them. So I kind of got back into journalism on a freelance basis. And then the editor of the Manhattan Mercury, I reached out to her and asked if she needed an extra pair of hands because I was interested in expanding on my freelance work. And that led to a full-time position. They had a position open for education reporter, and she asked if I wanted it. And as much as I liked the idea of working on a freelance basis, the thought of full-time pay and benefits sounded a lot better. So I went ahead and said yes, and that turned out to be an excellent decision. I now live in Manhattan, and I'm enjoying my time here, and I'm enjoying the staff, working with the staff at the Mercury. It's an award-winning newspaper. It's one of the oldest newspapers in the state. It's been around since, I believe, 1890s. And it has a pretty wide circulation across Manhattan, Riley County, and surrounding area, and throughout this portion of the Flint Hills. And things are rolling. We have a magazine as well. I've written a couple of stories for it. It's called 313 Magazine. And I recently went on an assignment for that. I took I didn't take it, but I went with a person who owns a Tesla, and we took the Tesla to the geographic center of the US, which happens to be in Lebanon, Kansas, which is north central portion of the state. And it's about, from Salina, it's about an hour and a half. From Manhattan area, it's closer to 2 hours. And that was an excellent trip, very interesting. And we had some great conversations and good time all around, trying out the electric car and testing its limits, I guess. So that's coming up later this month. That edition of the magazine will be coming soon. And yeah, we have the book is available, the poetry book's available for pre-order. And otherwise, I just try and stay busy as much as possible. I kind of follow the line of thinking that as long as I keep moving, I'm okay. Anderson Cooper wrote something about that in his memoirs, and I remember it to this day. He talks about learning about sharks. He was on assignment learning about sharks, and sharks have to constantly keep swimming, otherwise they'll die. And he equates himself to being akin to the shark in that he has to keep moving, keep forcing air through his lungs. And the thought that there are some sea creatures, there are some sharks who do not have to move from their little spot on the seafloor is kind of baffling to him. And it's kind of surprising as well to think that there are creatures in the world that don't have to leave their little corner of seabed. But yeah, I just keep forcing air through my lungs and we keep going. I don't know, does anybody have any questions? Feel free to ask them whenever. Go ahead and interrupt me because I'll just keep rambling. But yeah, it's been an interesting trip for sure. Most of my, I've been doing, yeah.
I was just going to say, and if they want to type it into chat, I would be happy to interrupt you and read out the questions if anybody feels more comfortable that way.
Sure, that'd be greid. That'd work just fine. But no, it's been an interesting trip. I see Stan has a question. Were there days it was tough to come up with a poem? Yes, every day. Some days more difficult than others. I just posted today's poem. That one was not too difficult. Sometimes I'm inspired by the image that I have. I will, throughout my day, if I see kind of an interesting something that would make an interesting background, usually out in nature, lots of some of the gorgeous flowers that are blooming right now, trees against sky, that kind of thing. I will find a nice angle or just a nice scene and take a snapshot of it to use as a background. And sometimes I draw inspiration from that for what the poem is for the day. Other times it comes from just kind of how I'm feeling that morning. Maybe something that's on my mind that's kind of eating at me a little bit. I'll use that as inspiration and write my feelings on that, turn the feelings on that into a poem, or just try and kind of feel, kind of delve into how I'm feeling that day. with the pandemic, I realized that I'm kind of more in touch with how I feel throughout any particular day, especially waking up in the morning. I've got a better sense of kind of the barometer of the day, if you will. So with that, I draw from inspiration or come up with a more contained thought, if you will, for the daily poem. But yeah, it's difficult many days, just because sometimes it's hard to get the creative part of the brain activated before 9 a.m. So it can be a little bit tough. But that's why I have my trusty mug of coffee here to help me out. Stan will tell you, as a journalist, coffee is extremely important to the daily process, and it helps a ton. But no, it's the poems. Sometimes they come naturally. Sometimes I have to really think about it and really kind of delve into how I feel about things. Let's see. I think there was another question, Curtis.
Let's see. This is from Cheryl. How did your various writing areas experiences inform or assist as you've moved through your writing career?
Well, I mean, everything kind of blends, everything kind of mixes together, I think, at least for me. Obviously, certain writing styles are kept separate for certain things, but I think just the nature of writing for me is to use all of it, use all of my experiences in different styles and formats. The format of newspaper writing is different from the format of writing for broadcast media. It's also different, of course, from creative writing. And of course, the poetry is a completely different side that I decided, that I wanted to explore. But it all kind of works together, I think. It all helps with, it all especially helps with I guess, vocabulary choices. It helps with just kind of maintaining a flow as far as writing goes, and a little bit of work ethic as well. Working in journalism has helped me to process my thoughts a little bit more quickly through my fingers into the keyboard, and it's kind of helped me, especially in writing my novel. It's helped me not worry as much about what goes on the page immediately, in terms of I can always go back later and rework it if I want. So that's been a big plus. It's all kind of helped me keep things concise, but also explore more in depth on things that matter as I find out. Curtis, you're muted.
There we go. I typed a question in, and anyway.
Yeah, about the cover shoot.
Yeah.
So this was fun. I don't know if you can see it. So I'm doing my best John Brown here on this cover. In one hand, I have a newspaper. In the other hand, I have a mask. And it was, when did we do this? March sometime? February or March?
Yeah, I think it was late February, early March.
Yeah, and it was raining. So right now in this cover photo, it's kind of pouring rain on the Capitol building, on the Capitol steps on the west side of the State House, and we've got the Jayhawk Tower in there nicely. It was a bit chilly, Stan. Yeah, I had the hoodie and the pea coat were coming in a lot of handy that day, but I think it turned out really well. I think the rain added a certain effect, certain atmosphere to it that you wouldn't otherwise get, and no pun intended, of course. And I think it worked out great. We did a bunch of different photos, and actually my author photo in the back of the book is an interesting one. I'll try and pull it up here. I wanted to have one of me in reading a newspaper in the rain, because I feel like that about sums up kind of my life. I'm the guy, kind of calmly sitting in the rain, just waiting. Yes, ethos is very much there. It's very much there. And I think it adds to the whole package as far as this little book is concerned.
Yeah, it was coming down so hard. I had a Ziploc bag around the camera, and just the very end of the lens was sticking out of the Ziploc bag, so the the camera wouldn't get drowned.
we call that, where I come from, we call that a discount waterproofing material. It works out okay. But no, it was a good time for this photo shoot, and it was a good time putting this book together, and in many coffee conversations with Curtis. There you go. There's a title for you: Coffee Conversations with Curtis. You can borrow that one from me. But no, it's turned out way better than I expected. I didn't really have any expectations, to be honest, about this little guy. I've never. This is my first book. I've wanted to publish a book, but I didn't know I didn't know how I would go about doing it. I've had many ideas for books over the years, but this one just kind of evolved naturally. Ever since I started posting these pandemic poems on social media, I would have comments on, you should do a book, or you should put them together in a collection, or I'd love to buy these somehow. So now those folks will get their chance. And I do have the link for pre-order. You can pre-order it right now. I do have the link on my social media available right now. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm excited. I'm really excited about it.
Hey AJ, we have a question from Perry.
Yes.
He asks, did your work with newspapers stimulate your photography?
Yes. Okay. So a little bit of backstory. I see a question from Beth. Well, I'll get there. A little bit of backstory though. So my interest in journalism started in high school. I went to high school in Garden City in Western Kansas, and we had an excellent newspaper advisor and publications teacher. His name was Monty Mosier, and he kind of the old cowboy type, and he is a student of journalism as well. I say student, he's well into his 60s. He's a grandpa now, but I don't think you ever stop being a student of journalism. It always has something new to teach you. And he was one of the first people that kind of inspired the idea within me that you could get paid to write stories and people read them. And it's very, with a very certain specific format and emphasis on purveying facts and information for the public. I thought that was an interesting idea, and I had never really thought about doing that for a living before. When I got into high school, I thought that, well, I really didn't have any idea what it is I wanted to do. I was interested in a number of different things. Thought that maybe I would go be a storm chaser and scientist and travel the country and learn about severe weather, but I realized there was a lot of math involved in that, and I am not a math person at all. I'm much more abstract. I do better with words and thoughts and phrases and talking to people instead of trying to derive formulas and calculations. So once I got into an intro to publications course, this would have been freshman year of high school. I did very well in that. Yeah, I agree, Stan. No, I did very well in that class, and Mr. Mosier was very excited to have somebody interested in writing and journalism, as it were. About the same time that happened, I got into some of the broadcasting courses at Garden City High School. They have an award-winning broadcasting program there, and a student-run television station. And I was heavily involved in the television station and the programming of that. I ended up hosting the kind of daily news for the school. It would air every other day. Well, I hosted it every other day, but it would air every day with different hosts for it. So I was one of the student hosts of that, as well as writing stories for the Sugar Beet. It's the Garden City High School student newspaper. It's the oldest in the state, formed in 1901. It's called the Sugar Beet because in Western Kansas in the turn of the century, sugar beet farms and agricultural scene was huge. Not so much anymore, of course, but at the time that was the biggest export. and so they gave the student newspaper, that moniker, and it stuck. I still have my T-shirts from my time at the Sugar Beet. And fun fact, my editor right now at the Manhattan Mercury, her father is Monty Mosier. Had nothing to do with me getting hired there, of course, but it's just kind of another, it's more proof that it's a small planet after all. So we get to, we'll chat about that. I'll be like, oh, how's your dad doing? That kind of thing. But yeah, it's fascinating. Now I saw Beth had a question. I don't know if that answered the question. I kind of rambled a little bit.
Yeah, Beth.
So I was wondering if it's okay. So you said that you were posting all the poems from your book, and I was just wondering if you just post them on your own. Like if I were to just follow you on Twitter, or if I were to Facebook friend you, would I see that, or where is there a special place to go to find?
Yes. So yeah, any of those: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram as well, if you have Instagram. All of them are just, you can look me up. It's just my name, AJ Dome, as it appears here, but reversed, of course. You can just look me up. I'm pretty much the only one. Yeah, that's where I post my daily poems. And I feel like that's the best use for my social media at this point. I was never terribly active with it to begin with, but now it's a good reason to keep them around, as well as just staying in touch with people. I can share these little things, and that's kind of that's kind of part of the inspiration for the daily poems as well. The genesis of it, I thought, well, there was so much negativity through social media posts that I was seeing from friends and other folks, and that I was inspired to add a little bright spot, if you will, a little bit of positivity. So we started with very humble beginnings on Facebook, posting the daily poems, and we've kind of grown from there. And yeah, thank you, Stan. I appreciate that. Yeah, the images, I started on Facebook just using the little colorful background options that they have when you make a status on there. And I decided to, instead of doing that, to take my own photos and backgrounds. And I actually use Snapchat for that. I'll take a snapshot in Snapchat and overlay text, and again, kind of come up with my poem for the day through that. But yeah, it's interesting. So I think Curtis is screen sharing now.
Yes, I was going to kind of show. So that was where they started, and then you moved on to using.
Yeah, then I moved on to using more photos. Try to use photos from my environment. At the start of the pandemic, I was living in Topeka in an apartment with a couple of friends. And so there's a lot of interior shots of the apartment and exterior shots, as well as just my surrounding area. I lived near Burnett's Mound, if you know where that is in Topeka, just underneath of that. So I had plenty of nature to draw from, as well as, there's a stoplight. Just kind of random shots as I would see them, and trying to, I don't know, just come up with interesting angles or backdrops for things, things that I would think a poem would look good as a background with. There's an old Mercedes there in the corner, just different settings. There's the boat ramp. There's my Father's Day one in the corner. That's my dad looking at a brand new Ford GT, and I decided that would be the perfect one for Father's Day to use. There's a lot of blue in there, of course, lots of storm and cloudscapes. That's one of my favorite things is seeing patterns in clouds and the different shapes that they take on, to draw inspiration from, as well as sunsets, flowers. My parents' house has some beautiful flowers. Oh, there's my mollusk. There's my snail. Was on a morning walk and met a little snail feller and decided to take his photo. But yeah, the photos have evolved over time. The poems have evolved over time, and it's interesting this book is kind of interesting to see the evolution of them as the pandemic wore on. The book only goes it goes from poems number 1 through 250. The next book of poetry will be number 251 through 500. Today I posted poem number 417, so we're getting there. But it continues, and yeah, you can see some of the evolution of the images and poems there.
I remember that day.
Yeah. Yeah, we were having coffee and discussing the book and what to do about it in that one. And so I decided to come up with a poem right then and there about it. And those are salt and pepper shakers at Julie's Bistro in downtown Topeka. So if you go there, you can use salt and pepper shakers with little boots. But yeah, there's my dog in one corner there. And there's right there. There he is. And there's the final page. And the poem number 250 came a few days before Thanksgiving. And I decided to kind of, I guess, dedicate it a little bit. In November of 2019, was not in a good place mentally or socially, and was talking with my friend that I was living with at the time, and we were both kind of struggling at the time, and we decided that we were going to spend the next year on some self-improvement, and of course the world completely changed while we were in the middle of that self-improvement. And that led to a lot of very tense discussions. It worked out well ultimately, but it was definitely a learning experience trying to deal with the effects of the pandemic, which we had no idea what they were going to be when it began. And over time, how we've kind of dealt with that. He's still a friend, of course, and I told him I would make sure that he would get his copy. So and they were partially due to that, or had an effect on that inspiration for starting the pandemic poems. My friends are well aware of my inkling for creativity, and I guess I can't help myself with it. It's going to happen no matter what. So they know that about me, and they know that I need something to keep my mind focused or stimulated in that regard. So they were very encouraging of that, and they are equally as excited for the book as I am. So that's something to feel good about.
And I thought I would mention, just because I'm playing publisher here for a minute, but the interior of the book is in full color, like you saw it. That was one of the things that we had to work out, was how to do full color without the book costing $40. But I think we nailed it, and I think it looks really neat to see all of them in color on the inside.
Yes, no, I think so too. I'm really happy with how it turned out.
AJ.
Yes. Are you there, Perry?
Oh yeah, definitely. Go ahead, AJ. Just wanted to
oh
see
no,
you
I thought you.
Just the.
I thought you had a question.
No, I didn't have any questions.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to get back to you.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about journalism. I got started in high school. I have my teachers to blame for that. They were very helpful and encouraging and inspiring in that regard. And it's kind of funny that I'm now the education reporter, because now I can write about teachers doing cool things and students doing amazing things. And in high school, I was kind of lost. Had no, I mentioned I didn't really know what I wanted to do, what I was going to do. The interest in writing has always been there. My whole family kind of has a gift for that. My older sister, she lives in New Mexico. She writes science fiction novels, and she has been at that for the past 15 or so years, and actually longer than that. She's now 36, and she started writing her first novel when she was in high school. So that's something that she's very passionate about. My younger sister is also a writer, but she writes in a scientific manner. She is getting her her master's degree from Emporia State University in earth sciences. She wants to study ancient natural disasters and how they might have shaped the planet, which is fascinating to me. I love that. And so a lot of her writing tends to be more scientific in nature, but still there are ways to make that creative, and she's exploring that as well. And then as far as I go, I started writing for the school newspaper in high school, and that led to many interesting adventures and stories. In 2008, for the Sugar Beet, I went to Greensburg. It was a year after the EF5 tornado wiped out the town, or 95% of the town. And I know Greensburg from my personal memory as being green. It was a very aptly named town. They had many thick trees, beautiful old growth cottonwoods and maples and oak trees, and the town was very well shaded and very comfortable and very picturesque in the sense of that it was just a very kind of classic small Kansas town. And when I went back there in 2008, it was completely different. It was hard to recognize landmarks. It was hard. Yeah, writing's in my family's DNA, I guess. Thank you, Stan. Which is funny because, for full disclosure, Stan Finger is my cousin. So it's kind of funny. Yeah, we all have a gift for assembling words on pages, I guess. But no, I went to Greensburg in 2008. I got to interview the meteorologist who issued the tornado emergency for the town. His name is Mike Umscheid. He's in the Dodge City office of the National Weather Service. And that was my first introduction to writing about tornadoes, writing about scientific matters. And that was an interesting adventure. Got to do a lot of cool things as a student journalist as well in college. Got to go on a number of adventures. And now I make my, that's how I make my living. I get to write about interesting things, interesting people, and some of the cool things that they do. It's not always a I guess pleasant experience. Sometimes you end up writing stories that leave you feeling a little bit down or sad or just a little sick to your stomach. I've definitely had my share of that. But now with the Mercury, I get to delve into some more pleasant topics. I get to learn about some of the cool things students are doing, some of the cool things teachers are doing, as well as just covering K-State as well. That's a big portion of my job, is making sure that K-State and some of the things that go on campus, as well as in that academic community, are represented. And that's been a great joy as well. I didn't know how I would fare with this position when I accepted it. I just knew that it was a good idea to accept it. I could feel it in my gut. And I do not regret that decision. I've gotten to meet all kinds of interesting people, interviewed all kinds of people. I got to have a Zoom chat with Jeff Daniels a couple of months ago. He did a virtual concert for K-State at McCain Auditorium. And there was an opportunity to interview him, and I got to do so. And what a lovely gentleman he was. So there's been all kinds of interesting things to come from it. Curtis, I think there's been a couple of questions pop up.
Yes, there have. So we have a question from Rhonda. She says, earlier you mentioned Anderson Cooper, and she's curious about your favorite journalists or mentors. Okay.
Somebody else asked me about this recently, and I kind of had a hard time answering it, but I take inspiration from a lot of different journalists and mentors. The biggest mentor I could think of would probably be the high school teachers. Monty Mosier, in my broadcasting teacher, his name is Shelby McNutt, and he's still teaching at Garden City High School right now. He's not teaching the broadcasting program, although he did originate that program in the 1990s. And then, of course, I mentioned Monty Mosier. He was a big influence on kind of the idea that I could earn a living by going different places and talking to different people and writing about it later. I was like, really? That's a thing you can do to make money? Wow. So let's do it. And really exposing me to the different pathways that journalism can take you. It's not, there's so many different areas to go from. Anderson Cooper is an influence. A little bit less so these days because I'm not in broadcast media, but it's still there. William Allen White, a big influence as well. Living in Emporia, I got to learn all about him and dive really deep into the man's philosophy and his just kind of how he carried himself and some of the things he did. He's definitely an inspiration as far as some of the topics they chose to pursue and some of the tactics that he used. I don't think I would ever run for governor against a member of the Ku Klux Klan. I hope that's not ever a thing that has to happen. But just that kind of approach to community journalism, I really appreciated. And I take inspiration from, or I take inspiration from some of the people that I've worked with in the past. Some of my I've taken some of my first jobs in journalism, especially in Emporia at the radio station. I would consider some of those people to be mentors as well, just because I was fresh out of the box and ready to go and kind of young and dumb and full of enthusiasm. And they really kind of helped shape me into well, this is the approach to take. This is the way of thinking. This is a good way to think about these things. So as you go about your career. And I saw Stan posted, journalism has changed a lot. It really has. It's even changed a lot since I was in high school. At that time, everybody was focused on multimedia. Everybody was focused on being a jack of all trades, master of none, which has its place. And my senior project to graduate high school, I built a website. I didn't really build it. I used a template. But I put together a website of how it would look if I were a freelance journalist. And some of the stories and different things featured in that, passing grade, of course. And even at that time, the emphasis on multimedia was so big that we were seeing a lot of newspapers cutting their photography staff, a lot of TV stations cutting down on their video journalists and kind of moving towards a method of teaching that gave everybody a certain set of tools to draw from. But there have turned out to be kind of problems in line with that. Problems. It turned out to not necessarily be what was needed. It was something that was being predicted as the future of journalism, in that everybody would do a little bit of everything. And that has proven to be true in some cases, but there's no replacement for a good photographer. There's no replacement for a good videographer. Those things, I think, will never go away. And there's no replacement for a good writer. You know, you can teach the dog to do certain tricks, but that doesn't necessarily mean he has to do them all the time. So it's definitely evolved, especially in the 10 years. Yeah, especially in the modern era. It's very the emphasis on the visuals has been very interesting to see as it's evolved over time, and as especially with smaller newspapers or smaller media outlets, more community focused ones. Sometimes the money just isn't there to keep people employed or to maintain a level of staff that you might need. When I worked in Emporia, the newsroom at KVOE consisted of two people, myself and our news editor, Chuck Samples. And it was interesting to delve into some of those multimedia aspects, while maintaining the main focus of the job being, you are an on-air news person. You will be speaking every day, and it was definitely an interesting, I don't want to say juxtaposition, but it was interesting how those things played together. On one aspect, in a lot of areas of Kansas, you have some very traditional aspects of journalism. You have, well, especially with Emporia, it's a little bit more of the classic ideal of the radio broadcaster, the radio news broadcaster. And I really enjoyed that. I leaned into it as hard as I could, while exploring some of those multimedia aspects. So I think in the modern era of journalism, none of those things are going to go away. It's just they're going to continue to adapt depending on the situation and your location. I do think location plays a big part of it. In other states and other places, I don't think the same methods of journalism or the same formats would work, just because every community is different, every situation is different. And I think really it just depends, no matter where you go, there are still the same concepts in place, but the way that those concepts are utilized might be a bit different or vary depending on the degree of I guess publication that is present. So,
hey AJ, we have a question from Mark, and you were talking earlier about freelance writing when you were in high school, studying that, and Mark's asking if you could explain the secret for how to get paid for freelance writing. He says, I've never mastered that. I was delighted to get a check from Tracy for my piece in 105 Meadowlark Reader.
Nice. Well, honestly, I would probably not be the best person to talk about getting paid for freelance writing. I think my cousin Stan would be better at that than me. However, I can say the freelance writing didn't happen until just recently. In high school, I was not involved in any kind of paid freelance work. I did work for the radio station in Garden City when I was in high school. So that kind of helped matters. But on a freelance basis, again, I wrote for the Kansas Reflector, and Sherman Smith is the editor of that publication. And he recently won the Kansas Press Association Journalist of the Year Award. And I reached out to him. Basically, how it would work is I would write a story of particular interest to me, but Sherman Smith told me they really wanted somebody to cover the environmental beat, or the kind of environment and climate stories. So that is of interest to me. So I decided to tackle it. And basically, what would happen is I would take a couple of weeks, put together an article, submit it to them, and they'd review it. Okay, this is good, thank you. And thank you, Curtis. Yeah, kansasreflector.com. They do great work. And I would submit it, they'd review it. Okay, we're going to publish it on this day. And with the Reflector, they have they are run by, or they are part of a nonprofit, bigger organization called States Newsroom. And States Newsroom basically had it set up to where I would get a deposit in my bank account once the story went live. So, sorry, I'm getting messages, but that's basically it. But yeah, as far as developing that kind of regular freelance work, it does take time. And at the time, I was thinking that that's the route that I wanted to take, and that's why I reached out to the Mercury originally to explore some more freelance opportunities. And in that sense, it really just depends. It's really, I think, about expanding continuing to expand your reach and build that catalog of clientele, as it were, to become a more well-rounded freelancer. And it gives you the chance to write about a bunch of different topics. But yeah, there's plenty of options. And again, yeah, Stan would probably be a better person to answer some of the questions about how to make a living as a freelancer. But it is possible. I do know that it is very possible. It just takes a little bit of time and a lot of work, and probably a little bit of getting out of your comfort zone with what you want to write about. I lost my comfort zone in that regard a long time ago. So it's Yeah, so Stan says, and am able to make a living as a freelancer now. But yes, it just requires some patience, is what I would say. It takes time and patience, and as much effort as you want to put into it, you will get out of it. So it just, yeah, yeah, might have to have Stan chat about it if we want, if he wants as well. But yeah, no, it is entirely possible in the state of Kansas to make a living as a freelance writer. It's entirely possible to make a living as a journalist. And as we've seen, it is entirely possible to make a living as a poet, as a published poet. It just takes a little bit of practice. So, yeah, we can work something out on the calendar. Yeah, bring Stan in. But
very good.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, if we should check to see if there are any other questions. AJ, if there's anything else you want to talk about, and then we should hand the meeting back to Perry, because I know that we have some state convention stuff to talk about and a couple of other things on the agenda.
Sure. I can always talk about something. I'm always happy to answer any questions. Sorry, I had to leave my camera for a few moments. Oh yeah, poems. Let's read some poems. How about that? Let's read some poems. So Curtis, if you want to bring up the just random pages of poems, and I'll read from them. That way people can see the visuals as well. Let's start at the first pages.
Okay.
And then we'll skip around.
All right, let me get it up here. There we go. All right.
So yeah, let's pick a page. I'll find it in my book here and read from it.
All right, I'm just going to kind of scroll here, and then I'm just going to stop. Okay, I'm going to stop. Wherever it stops, I've done scrolling. It's still my computer. Oh, my computer is being really big.
We scrolled too far.
Well, let's start with one of the pre-photography poems.
Sure. So I really like, let me pull it up here on my page as well. I really like poem number 8. Pandemonium, or at least something resembling. I shall instead carry on peacefully. Let's see, poem number 9. Coffee brewing. Coffee brewing, birds singing, pen and paper scribbling. A symphony for inspiration.
Okay, I'm just going to hit the random. There we go.
All right, what is it? 1415. Let me get to that. All right, yeah, and then I started to delve into more of my photography with it. Poem number 26. Brilliant bolts of white hot heaven crackle and spark, leaving audible traces of their existence. A reminder from Ma Nature that I am alive.
All right, I'm going to hit there we go. We're on page 1617.
1617, let's see here. All righty. Okay. Pandemic poem number 30. Signs from the universe, both physical and emotional, to carry on. I am imbued with fresh creative spirit.
Okay, we'll do another. I'm on page 3637.
Okay. All righty. Let's see.
Number 73 is kind of topical. I don't know.
Yeah, let's do number 73. Dome Pandemic poem number 73. I feel the anxieties and tensions of people fearing for their lives across generations, the knee of a nation cutting the breath from their bodies. The road to true freedom is paved with civil disobedience. Black Lives Matter.
Okay, I'll just do another. Oh, I really hit it. 74, 75.
Okay, let's see here. All righty. Here we go. Dome Pandemic poem number 148. Condensed water vapor kisses the trees and rooftops, slowly dissolving and leaving no trace of its morning meddling. Any negative vibes are welcome to join the fog on its terminal journey.
Okay, I feel like we're on a game show or something here.
Yeah.
All right. 110, 111. Some colorful pictures here.
Yeah. So we took a trip last October-ish. Yeah, right around Halloween, we took a trip to New Mexico to visit my older sister. They have a ranch about 45 minutes from Albuquerque, and of course provided some inspiration. So I will read my Halloween poem, Pandomic poem number 220. The season of spook is upon us, and I feel right at home among the darker decor celebrating the eve of Hallows. It's time spent among loved ones in calming creative spaces, which I value most.
Okay. Oh, I went too far. Let's do one more. How about that? 122,
Sure.
123.
Sure. 122, 123. All right. All right. We'll see you later, Stan. I appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much. We'll see if we can't get you on the calendar and do a meeting, and we can chat about it. Yeah, that'd be great. And then you and we'll do lunch. We'll chat about that. I'll message you. But I appreciate it. But yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, thank you. Let's see. Which one should I do? Here we go. I think if people can relate to this one. Pandomic poem number 242. Sometimes the muse stays a while and brings gifts in the form of complete creative constructs. Other times she rings the doorbell and dashes away without saying hello. I write regardless of how fleeting her visits may be.
Okay. And one thing I hadn't thought about, and we got a blurb from Kevin Rabus, and he referred to these poems as haiku-like, and I thought, wow, that was a great insight that I hadn't thought about until I saw the blurb.
They are kind of haiku-like, and I didn't really think about it either. My original thinking for the format of them was just to keep it short and simple. And I like a good use of a semicolon. So I thought, how can I make a complicated or a longer form thought as compact as possible, was the thinking. In order for it to fit in that Facebook graphic, and it has a character limit on it if you use those kind of goofy Facebook backgrounds when you make a status. So that was the original thought, was how can I make it fit within this character limit? Since I've done away with that, now I can expand the poems a little bit. They've gotten longer over time, but Snapchat again still has its own character limit as far as what you can put on a overlay on an image. So now I follow that kind of that format, and it's worked out pretty well. I think it keeps them nice and short and sweet, and it kind of makes me have to think about how I can, vocabulary choices and how I can kind of compress some of my thoughts that otherwise might fill up an entire page. So Rhonda asked something.
Yeah, she asked, are you a member of the Facebook group 365 Poems in 365 Days?
I am not. I should be, though, probably. I can post them on there. That'd probably be a good idea. I need to be. I am part of the Emporia Writers Facebook group. I'm also part of a Facebook group. Thank you, Rhonda. I appreciate it. I'm also part of a Facebook group that a friend of mine in Colorado is running. It's kind of a pandemic mental health check type group, and I've started posting my poems in there on a daily basis to kind of meet a need, and in that, maybe it would help somebody feel a little bit better if they came across it, and because that was the original intention. That's all I really want out of these things, is it helps me feel a little bit better about my day and kind of formulate thoughts and get my creative side thinking, and if other people find enjoyment in them, then that's perfect. Try to be a bright spot amidst negativity.
Well, AJ, it has been so wonderful to have you. We're going to need to get the meeting turned back over to Perry, but I appreciate you joining us, and wish we could have done it in person, but this worked out really well. Also, Rhonda says, great job. So I'm going to hit stop on the record, and then we will we'll hand things back over to Perry. But thank you for being here with us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Thank you all for being here and listening, And thank you, Beth. I really appreciate it. Feel free to, feel free to find me on Facebook. You can add me on Facebook. Feel free to find me on Twitter, Instagram, if you have that as well. Just search my name, AJ Dome. I'm pretty much the only one there. And if I'm not, I'm definitely the most bald one there. So that you definitely know it's me. But yes, I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great rest of their weekend.
Thanks, AJ.